And in that way, it's become almost like too easy for people to get misinformation. There's so much misinformation that journalists years ago would have nailed in 3 seconds and known it was fake. And I don't think you would have seen anything like what you saw in the 2020 election, even the 2016 election. I think the internet has become such a sewer of nonsense that it's a problem. But yes, we did it the old-fashioned way, and we still do, believe it or not. Any good journalist or anybody out there doing documentaries cannot rely on the internet. The internet, I went to a meeting once and some girl at NBC says to me, "Hey, Bob, my husband sits at home. He's developing documentaries on the internet." I'm like, "Really? Great, wonderful. What kind of research is he doing?" "Well, he's grabbing all this from the internet." That's like going to a library years ago where anybody could throw a book on the shelf, no publishers involved, nothing. We're living in a nightmare where not only are conspiracies overplayed, they're underplayed, and you're going to see a lot of stuff coming out from me in the future through this great company, Uncorked Entertainment, that I'm working with. We're going to be putting out documentaries that would have been network level, but you're going to be able to get them, through on demand or through digital. But basically, same kind of credibility, same kind of journalism. We're not relying on the internet. And I got to tell you, right now, if you're relying on AI, good luck. AI
Yeah,
is
I'm with you.
a nightmare. Just try it out yourself and find out how much error is involved in AI, in Google. And now Reddit is becoming more of a place for any kind of, I think, objective journalism than Google is. We're living in
Yeah,
a
it's
nightmare.
really crazy how my whole opinion is like at some point, I think the internet got away from them, whoever them may be.
Yep.
And so they decide they're just going to flood it.
You better believe it. And it's a great way to keep the society in a certain place of dumbness and manipulatableness, if that's such a word.
Yeah,
And I
I
think it's a
agree.
nightmare.
I really do believe that, what's happening right now is like somebody like people like us that, know the playbook and watch the playbook all the time. I think what they're doing right now is flooding us with so much useless knowledge
No doubt.
that when something important comes by, we just don't pay attention to it because our hard drives are full, and they just
Exactly.
want to make us so dumb that we can't participate in our own government and what is happening with our own government. We can't,
That's right.
nobody can, like, I remember I was at the Laugh Factory the other night and I did a joke about, no, it was at the Comedy Store. I was in the belly room and I did a joke about how, I mean, this isn't to get political, but Biden had made the draft automatic, right? And everybody was like of the age. They were like 22, 23, 24-year olds. I'm like, yeah, Biden made the draft
I
automatic.
didn't even hear you.
And they didn't even know what I was talking about. I'm like, oh, you didn't hear that on TikTok? You're too busy watching the hot good chick before you could understand what was going on with. I mean, it's crazy. It's
Yeah,
so.
we've been dumbed down because you know what happens when you go to your Google search, you're getting fed the stories that are going to be interesting to you by the bots. So
Yes.
you're automatically like, you better put a defensive system up because they're trying to distract you. That's the goal. Distract
I
you.
couldn't agree more. And you get siloed. And Johnny, what am I calling it right now that you say I'm mixing my metaphors?
I'm giving a plug here to Jon Stewart on Comedy Central 2 or 3 weeks ago on Monday night. What he did was he eviscerated the journalism community. He eviscerated where we are in terms of truth. He had a great point. The point was simple. When you're out of court, you can say anything you want, like Giuliani, like all the guys that were saying, it's a fraud, it's a fraud. We lost the election because it's a fraud. But when you go into the actual courtroom, they say the exact opposite in court. No, there's no fraud here. That's what they said. They were trying to get the election turned around, but not based on fraud, based on something else. And that's why Fox had to pay almost $1 billion for lying to America. Now, you could like whatever candidate you want, but that's the truth. When you lie in public, you get away with it on the internet, wherever, low-level cable news shows, whatever. But when you get into a courtroom, when perjury matters and you may be thrown in freaking jail, that's where you find out
Yeah,
about truth.
the only thing I'm going to pump a brake on that is that I'm going to I'm just going to just push back a little bit on that because if we go back to 2015, we were told that Russian collusion had taken the thing. That turned out to not be true at all.
Oh, hold on, time out, time out. I heard this a lot lately. I'm just gonna say one thing. Collusion doesn't necessarily mean that Trump or the people get on the phone with the Russians, okay? Collusion only meant to the average human being, not political, none of that. Collusion meant Donald Trump Jr. Really? The Russians really want to help us?
I disagree.
It doesn't require
Oh,
a
I
lot of
totally disagree.
collusion.
I think it was. Not to get in on it, but it's like there's not one side that has a monopoly on the truth.
How do you explain him kissing Trump? How do you explain him kissing Putin's you know what and saying our own CIA and our own people? I don't believe them. I believe Putin. How nuts is that? Is that beyond any level of comprehension?
Yeah,
well,
but
I mean, I'm not sure I'd ever believe our own CIA over
yeah,
anything.
I mean, who are you going to believe?
stranger
Hillary
on
Clinton and the CIA and the FBI that have been
It's not
caught
about
lying
it's not about that.
consistently?
It's not about it's we're talking about journalism and truth, right?
Right.
All I'm saying to you is
Okay, let's just take this thing. The Hunter Biden laptop is not real. It's Russian collusion.
So
And then it came out that it was 100% real.
so don't vote for his father. Okay, whatever you
But
want.
I get what you're saying, but it's like, I have major problems with Jon Stewart and the fact that Jon Stewart was able to thrive when it was good guys, bad guys. And now that we see this, there's this uniparty out there of these super elites versus all of us. I think he's having a real hard time trying to, and not that Jon Stewart can't do a great story here or there. Of course he can, but I just feel like,
Just that one. I'm not, I don't watch that show much, okay? But that one 45-minute show where he brought on a guy who was a staunch Republican who explains very carefully that he's a Republican, but he's not a Trumper. He's a Republican, and how he explains why he's a Republican and what's the differences. It's just another breath of whatever. It's sort of like it's not political. It's more just back to the basics of American culture. We have one thing in our Constitution, one business, only one, protected by the Constitution. Do you know what that is?
journalism.
You got it. How come something so important to our country has been made into an entertainment vehicle? How do you go from the founding fathers so concerned about truth and having a very active journalistic, body in our country to make sure what we're hearing from our government is true and from other people around us is true? How did that become so not important in our world, in our country?
Well, I can sit there and tell you that. I mean, I could sit here forever and list all the reasons that we should not like Trump. I can do that. And it's like, you're never going to hear it by the news and the Rachel Maddows of the world and all those people, because their bosses who sign their checks like these things that Trump does. So I can do that.
Trump. It's not about Trump, the politician. How the hell did he ever get on the playing field to be president?
Well, because Hillary picked him. I mean, listen, I don't want to get too much into that. I just want to say this.
That's the Mandela effect, in my opinion, and I mean it sincerely.
What I think happened, and this is just me being honest, is like, I just think that when they what's the word?
Deregulated
deregulated the media, and we allowed all these people, this small group of people, to control the information. We lost independent journalism. Now there is a lot of hot garbage out there. I would tell you, but there's people like Ryan. Listen, there's just independent journalists out there that are like busting their ass to get the truth out, and they're fighting against everybody. Like what you're doing right now is like part of that. You're like, you're putting out something against the mainstream media that which wants to monopolize our attention. And like when you say we're going to put out docs that are like television good, I love that. I
love everything you just said. It was so perfect. You said it better than I did. There was a change made in the late 80s that allowed the networks, ABC, NBC, Fox, not so much Fox, the three main networks, and everyone that followed after that, they didn't have to have a dedicated night for news that did not incorporate ads, was not involved with any money making. The idea was you're telling the news to America, and that's your job. Bad news that came out of that, when the companies you mentioned gobbled up all these other companies, All they cared about was the ratings and money, allegedly. Money was the issue. It was way beyond if it bleeds, it leads. News has always been about, putting on sensational stuff to get ratings. That was fine even before. But now it was only money driven, only money. If you were the anchor of the news show and your ratings are going, you're out. Bye, see ya. Walter Cronkite, forget that, you're out. So the idea is we are losing our reality because we're not having anyone objectively, whether you like Trump, whether you like Biden, whether you like Mickey Mouse, who cares? There's supposed to be a journalistic center of our country that cares about getting to the truth. And if they don't get it on Monday, they'll get it on Tuesday, if not Tuesday, but they're going to get to the bottom line. And we don't have that anymore. Open portals to hell, and maybe the Mandela effect was caused by some of this. A lot of other bad shit's going on. A lot of other bad shit.
So you brought up the timeline earlier. You don't believe that there was a timeline change? You definitely portals. Could there be a mixture of both of them at the same time?
Yes, I think we're dealing with something very, very minor here. It's like that if the timelines were merged. There's a guy named Gordy Rose shown in our show. He built the quantum computer with his scientists. He's a business guy, but he talks all about the quantum computer in 2015-16, that the quantum computer is going to be able to go into another dimension, pull a little piece of that dimension and bring it into our dimension. He makes it very fucking clear. So who is the they? At that time, it was NASA and CERN. That's the only two places that were dealing with the quantum computer in any major way. So I'm saying to you, here we are 9 years later, as my movie comes out on, July 9th, this is literally the comeuppance of all these predictions, I believe, where they punched a hole into one dimension, which means there's a Bob like me sitting here in another dimension, having a talk with you right now, just like we are, but maybe I say a little bit differently here than I say it there. And somehow what I said there is now brought in here. And now what you think I said 10 minutes ago, it's been changed. And I think that little piece of a reality somehow kind of merges with our reality, which is what Gordy Rose claimed was going to happen. So I don't know. When someone says something, maybe you want to believe them.
Have you seen the TV show Dark Matter?
Love it. I don't love the show because it's hard to wait for each episode and whatever. Because
we're so spoiled now. We just want to fly through it now. Now we're waiting. Like it's like, I gotta wait a week. Like television always been. What
do you want to say the premise to me? By the way, there are several shows that have played up the idea of tapping into other dimensions and
Everything Everywhere All at Once is one of my favorite movies of all time. And
that's great. And by the way, even going back further, My Dark Materials, a kind of a sleeper show on HBO. How about commercials now with portals appearing in a kitchen or portals appearing in a garage? I mean, I can't.
Yeah.
But
Rick and Morty.
Right.
Oh, Rick and Morty went crazy with it.
What was
back
that,
before they got rid of all the weirdos, all the perverts? Now the show's not any good. Anyways, so
Dark Matter is a good show.
But that's big on that, and
that suggests to you though that it's showing up so frequently now in pop culture.
By the way, you can't leave it out there because it helps me with the Mandela effect. They got to understand, people watching and listening today. Dark Matter is about literally someone who built a machine that could take you into what's called literally a place, a physical state where you're literally in multiple dimensions at the same time. And you can literally use this machine in this show. It's kind of fictional, of course, that you can go to you can open up a door, and every possibility that it could ever happen is behind many of these doors. So you open up a door, and that door, the world got a supernova in the sun. It's really interesting how they show that you never know what dimension piece might come into your dimension. You never know.
What does that suggest to you when you see these ideas appearing in pop culture more often? What is that? What do you think?
It comes back to the same question about predictive programming. You look at The Simpsons. They predicted things. It's unbelievable. Even Trump being elected president. I come from